In the ongoing saga of Oscar De La Hoya and Vergil Ortiz news, the judge rules the case to arbitration and rules that Vergil Ortiz and Rick Marigian, his team, cannot try to negotiate with a third party, i.e., Matchroom or anybody else, a fight with Jaron Boots Ennis right now. And once the case, Judge Silva rules that the case needs to be settled by a third party arbiter before September, in September or before. And I think that'd be best for all parties involved so we don't get into a Mikey Garcia with Top Rank and Andre Ward with Goosen kind of situation here. I don't think anybody wants to see Vergil Ortiz on the sidelines as long as those two fighters had to spend a chunk of their prime. But before we get into this, I think I'll go ahead and let the audience watch a clip I had with De La Hoya in the post-fight scrum of Barrios and Garcia a week and a half or so ago.
Back to the Vergil Ortiz situation. I know you called him ungrateful earlier today at Benavidez Zurdo. His dad on Twitter didn't like that. Said his comments about that. Rick Marigian, of course, chimed in too. And do you feel like those comments make it to where it's irreparable between you and Vergil Ortiz Jr. kind of thing?
I haven't heard from Vergil Ortiz. I don't even know if he knows what's going on. Seriously. Vergil Ortiz in December did an live interview saying how grateful he is and how I took him to the top and I've never done him wrong, and then his father texts me during Christmas, thank you very much for everything. So I'm blindsided by this. So, we're gonna do what we have to do to protect our rights and take it from there.
What would you say to people who feel like, saying, hey, promoters, we're here to stay, fighters come and go? I do think you were just saying what all promoters think. You were just honest enough to actually say it.
Of course.
But what do you think when people say, well, that's callous, that's throwing the fighters under the bus, that's a little Dana White-ish of you, for example? What's your response to that?
Well, what I say to that is that I'm not going to be disrespected anymore. Enough of that. Enough of the golden boy bullshit, Enough of the Mr. Nice Guy, this and that. No, I'm going to protect my rights. I'm going to do what's correct. I'm not in the wrong. I say the truth. You watch Clapback, it's nothing but facts. So if I was in the wrong, I'll be the first one to admit it.
Okay, so obviously during that clip, Oscar's letting it rip. And I asked him, is this Dana White-ish of you? And that's from his perspective and a lot of people's perspective that Dana is known to be a cutthroat businessman. And if he doesn't like tolerating your shit as he sees it, then he'll either air you out or sideline you or cut you. And Dana's not alone in that. Other promoters in boxing have done that for a long time as well. So Oscar had a clap back Thursday today where he said, you're going to be spending a lot of money in lawsuits. You're going to be sidelined. You've been ungrateful. He showed a clip of Vergil's dad getting into a scuffle, a brawl, whatever you want to call it, the night before his knockout of Erickson Lubin. So I don't know. I feel like there's some guilt to go around with each party here. Marigian is doing things behind Oscar's back, trying to align with other people. He got caught up in this because he thought a provision in Vergil's contract stating that Oscar needed a relationship, not a network deal. And this is what is Oscar's saving grace, it would appear to be in this lawsuit, that he needs a relationship with a network. And when Oscar's got a March 14th show with the debut of my guy Dylan Capatillo, La Manaza, on that show, alongside, I believe, Kenneth Sims and Arnold Barboza and a few, Gabriela Fandura. So that's technically a relationship with a network. It's funny. It's like in these sitcoms in the 90s. Is what's the status of their relationship? But it's not outlined in a hardline way. Raheem is needing a network deal, and so because it's a relationship, Oscar technically has a relationship with Amazon Prime in May when Gilberto Ramirez defends the unified cruiserweight titles. He has a relationship with DAZN. So I think there's the guilt on Rick's part, trying to do that. And I think trying to get the kind of money they got from Turki Al-Sheikh for the Madrimov fight, and then some probably, because Boots is a bigger assignment.
Well,
when
hold
that
on.
was an overpay, and
Let's
yeah,
deal with
go
the
ahead.
first chunk because there are a lot of moving pieces to this, and I want to get it too stacked up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So first, you discuss whether or not Oscar is employing Dana White tactics, which what you really mean is he's being a hard ass, strong man, immovable, like enforcing really what he clearly has at this stage is his contractual ability to do kind of whatever he wants to do as a promoter and then just offer his fighter the fight at whatever price, or whatever bag he can present, take it or leave it. That is true, but Oscar, unlike Dana White, doesn't own the universe in which his fighter fights. So he's going to have to negotiate with other promoters. He is constantly, in a way, under duress in that if his fighters decide that when the contract is up, they don't want to stay, he doesn't have a big enough stable to, and certainly not control the boxing enough to just survive any loss. Like, he wants Ortiz at Golden Boy. He needs Ortiz at Golden Boy. Like he needed Canelo. Like he needs Ryan Garcia. Like his stable needs to have these
His
stars.
lawyer argued that in court for him.
Right.
That
I'm
this would be,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
I'm sure. So what he also needs to be able to employ is some diplomacy. You can't just be a hard ass. You can't turn people against you. Doesn't matter what a guy said about you a month ago if he feels different today. And sometimes you got to have some humility, eat some of that crow, let these guys feel themselves. And I'm not telling any man to allow another man to just openly disrespect him, but it doesn't serve you to not be able to keep at least good communication and good faith with your fighters. A manager's job is to be opposition. So if you let the manager and the fighter gang up against you, not just in contractual dispute, but then also in a personality conflict, well, then everybody loses. And when it gets to that stage, I suggest that the blame shifts to the manager at that point because the manager has to then know what's best for the fighter in the sense that I think the manager can't let the promoter and the fighter get to this stage of being at odds unless the manager really does have a whole card. He really does have a trump card that he is certain to play and win. And either
He believes he did. He believes he had
didn't have that card and thought he did, or he was allowing his own ego and his own ability to hype Ortiz up about what he was capable of doing to overshadow the reality that he's actually not capable of pulling this off. That now he's got his fighter sideline. Him and the promoter are at full-blown odds. I don't know if he's going to end up having a walk back. So it's almost like when the parents split up and the kid goes with one parent and that parent starts talking mad shit about the other parent, and then you guys got a co-parent. And it's very difficult for the kid to figure out which parent to trust, who's the villain, who's blamed in this, and just raise a good kid. They're trying to manage and promote a good career. They're going to need to be able to do that together. So, big mistake on both sides by letting it get to this point. And also airing out your fighter about his father, about his shortcomings, about the things that were obviously said in private and in confidence, about times when you covered him. Well, if you covered him then and now you're pulling it out into the light now, then you never really covered him. That was just your, at best, like, blackmail almost to say, I covered you, but I could always make this public. That's bad form, man. Like I would never trust a guy again that did that to me. I said those good things about you a month ago because you were covering me, and now you're trying to shame me and my pops and all this stuff. That is not going to build the relationship. That's not going to help, bro. And what was the thing that you ended on where I jumped in?
Oh, about they're trying to get him paid as much, and of course, probably more, at least a little more than the Majimov fight, which is a overpay. It's not, respectfully, it's not you didn't draw that much money. It's an overpay by the PIF.
No, it was the relationship thing.
Oh, right. Go ahead.
Yeah, Rick. Well, if you're not a lawyer and you don't know what that means, or you didn't read that clause, and you also don't have a lawyer that reads that clause and knows what that means, it's pretty poor management right there. And of course, that's a brilliant clause for a promoter to have because if you say I have to be signed with a network, well, that hinders the promoter's ability to negotiate with networks when the network contract is up. If you have to maintain a network, well, the network then has to either extend you while you're under contract or not, and then there's going to be a gap between shifting from this network to that network, and then what all your fighters can just leave in that gap. No, you have to have some kind of clause in there that gives you time to change networks or shop another network while you're out of contract if you need to. Seems like a manager would know that. That is also, you know what I mean? It's just like I feel really bad for Ortiz. I'm sure he doesn't know which way to go with this thing. And pride is always involved. People have said too much. And now he's stuck in a catch-22, man. And this might not be finished and solved in December. You can't force a guy to fight. September.
Well, he said since that he's confident that his relationship with Golden Boy is over. Now, Oscar, it's been revealed that he has Ortiz contracted through August of 2027, which is a year and a half from now. And I think Oscar might be confident too because he's been through, this isn't his first rodeo. It didn't work out with Canelo, but it worked out with Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia couldn't stand him, threatened to sue him, I think more than once, has talked about being a free agent when maybe he may not actually be one. And there they are, hugging after Barrios Garcia. Maybe from Oscar's perspective, it's, hey, it's funny. De La Hoya, full disclosure, I grew up loving Oscar De La Hoya, but we compartmentalize here like adults, okay? We're talking about Oscar the suit, who's not acting like a professional suit, okay? But as an aside, what's interesting is you never know if he's having substance abuse problems again and acting erratic, or if he's or if he's actually, despite people saying, oh, he did get his office foreclosed in Los Angeles and Beverly Hills, and Dana and people saying, man, he's running out of money, cocaine's expensive, all this. Part of him's moving around like a guy who's not worried if he loses it all in boxing. Part of him's moving around like a guy who does have money and is saying, well, I want to be in boxing. I'm more invested now than ever. I'm ringside earlier at my fights than I've ever been. But if these guys don't respect me and think they can, push the Golden Boy, that's what he was saying in the quote, we shared earlier, then fuck it. I'm willing to lose. If I'm gonna go out, okay, if I'm being muscled out by the new era of boxing and my fighters want to split for me, then I'm gonna go out holding my dick a little bit in these questionable underwear I wear in some of these videos with Holly. But I would say, okay, I think you illustrated perfectly his guilt in this, okay? There's no real decorum there. You wind up sharing stuff about Vergil when he had Rhabdo. I understand your point. You're saying we still paid him a part of his purse despite that happening in two different times. But if the kid's body shut down against him, those are health scares. I think Hank the Bank Gathers is having I never even heard of this guy until this week. Rest in peace to him. Had a heart attack in the middle of the court on college basketball. Meaning, just because, strong athletes in great shape, they could have health scares too that can threaten their lives or at the very least compromise their health, for the rest of their lives. So that's very delicate stuff to throw out there. But Oscar's point is, I'm paying a piece of, and this will tie into another point I make. I'm paying a piece of Duarte's purse, who got screwed in the Richardson Hitchens debacle a week and a half ago. And I wasn't even supposed to be on the hook for that. That was supposed to be Salah. Salah took over the show. And we gave it to them. They didn't hold us up with a gun, but we gave it to them. And they don't want to be on the hook for my fighter not getting paid. So I'll give him a percentage. I think it was 30% of what the purse is. He's saying I did the same thing for Vergil when the Stanionis fights fell through. And to that point about having to be, in this case, independent and having to pay Duarte for what happened on a Salah show, maybe part of why you were going to have to take a $3 million guarantee. And if Oscar was operating in good faith, it'd be $3 million with a hell of an upside if Boots and Vergil killed it at the box office. But maybe why you're not going to get that $6.5 million guarantee that you got fighting on a turkey card is I want to maintain some independence here. You see what's happening to Frank Warren. You see what's happening with Eddie Hearn. I want to do this fight as your promoter and eat what we kill on this thing in the United States. And if you want to make a lot more than $3 million, do your part to kill it at the box office with Ennis, and you'll make a lot more than $3 million. That would be Oscar operating in good faith, and I hope he would. And I hope he wouldn't just be saying $3 million and maybe a little bit extra, because Oscar's been in court with multiple fighters, and Devin Haney's still saying they never paid him his upside from the Ryan Garcia fight, which was a De La Hoya show. But I understand De La Hoya saying, look, you're not going to make as much on the guarantee as you did the Madrimov fight because that fight was a overpay by a government fund. This is different. This is your guarantee that is stipulated in your contract, and I'm going to expect you to uphold that contract and not try to get out of it. When you by the letter of the law, it seems as though you may not have a way out of it just because Hearn, who may be backed by some of that Saudi money, but we don't know, or not, or Eddie was just willing to overpay, wouldn't be his first time, or DAZN, which gave him money in 2018 in the first place to overpay fighters, was willing to do it. And it may not even have wound up being an overpay if they killed it at the box office. But you get my point. De La Hoya is saying you're stipulated to make $3 million for a fight like this. That's what you're going to get. And you can't sue me just because you don't like the terms you did. Scottie Pippen couldn't sue Jerry Krause because he wound up being in a contract he didn't like. That's not how it works. And yeah, so
it's not how it works. And when the fighter knows that you need them, sometimes you got to kind of change how it works. So if you're going to stand on it, immovable, this is what the contract says, letter of the law, I'm not budging. Well, you can hold that line, but can you keep that fighter holding that line? And if it's a game of chicken, is Ortiz willing to wait this contract out? Because again, you can't make a guy fight. And the contract will expire with him on the sideline if he refuses to fight for you. And then you got nothing out of it when you maybe can, if not renegotiate the contract, at least give some concessions. And to your point, like you said, maybe you pay him the purse when you don't fight. I'm sure that's not in the contract. Maybe that is a concession. That's how Oscar feels. Like, hey, man, I've already overextended myself. I've done things I don't have to do. Now you're trying to force me to do things I don't have to do. And that's a bridge too far. I can 100% appreciate that. And it also may speak to what you've been warning against for a couple of years now, is that you're setting a different precedent with Riyadh season and Turkey going straight to fighters and these fights being overpaid and made on these major platforms, that there's a different expectancy from the fighter. And when Turkey removes his interest, then the promoter is left holding the bag, trying to meet those expectations. So you're going to have to, if you're Ortiz, recognize what the situation is. But if you're Oscar, you don't have the great relationship with the fighter, or the manager has polluted the fighter's mind against you, right or wrongly, everybody's going to end up at an impasse. Nobody's going to make money. Ortiz is going to lose time off his career. Boots Ennis is going to move on for the time being. And one thing we've all learned in boxing is there's no guarantees that any fight comes back anytime soon. Once you actually leave the table, you start going your separate ways, anything can happen. In a fight that was a letter away from being signed can be 5 years in the making if you walk away from that table. It's not the best thing for Boots Ennis either. Like, they both need that fight, right? If I were Eddie Hearn with his talent management or something, he might make his way down to wherever Golden Boy has their offices now and try to play mediator or something. Like, this is a fight that would benefit Eddie, Oscar, Matchroom, Golden Boy, Boots, Ortiz, and especially with what they're confronting now with Zuffa and Turkey, playing his hand on all different tables. These promoters need to unite. They need to now have learned the lesson of the past 2 years of what's possible if they work together. And it's still possible without Turkey Al-Sheikh, if they're willing to work together and do what's best for their fighters and their companies and boxing as a whole, if they're going to have any kind of resistance to this new intrusion into the sport and try to stop Zuffa from really taking over, because everything that happens in this vein is just another feather in the cap of Zuffa and the argument that boxing is broken.
Hmm.
We need a new system. We're presenting one for you. Leave these guys, come with us, and you won't have these problems.
Absolutely. And that's an antiquated one with Scotty from the 90s where he signed a fucked up deal with Jerry Krause. And in today's NFL, you outperform your contract the way Vergil may be doing or could do going forward. You renegotiate the deal right then and there, especially when they're not on their rookie deal. You keep the franchise player happy, okay? Before he sits out of training camp and demands a trade, which is what yeah, it's kind of what you could liken this to right now, right? Okay, but I'm going to get boxing fans mad here because you're right. They are robbed of a great matchup, but well before we got into any courtroom talk, and I hate I'm not, look, the over marination era, not a good one when it comes to Mayweather Pacquiao, Crawford Spence, etc. Mikey Garcia never fighting Vasil Lomachenko, right? So I'm not advocating for that, but I did feel that Vergil in Boots was undercooked, right? It would technically be for an interim title. They haven't proven themselves. By most of our eye test, they're the two best super welterweights in the world, but they haven't actually proven it, right? Fundora has a title defense against Thurman. He should run Thurman over. The WBC should have already mandated Fundora to defend said title against Vergil Ortiz. I think there's a chance here that Ortiz winds up fighting Fundora on Prime. Oscar was gloating about how great Prime was for heading into the Benavidez-Zurdo fight. Okay, Oscar, then why'd you cough up Barrios and Garcia? May not have really had the kind of leverage to stand in that fight's way. And, bigger money's bigger money anyways. But I feel like I like the Fundora Ortiz fight. I've been saying that. And
Hmm.
you know what's messed up, Raheem? There's a path to Vergil Ortiz becoming the undisputed champion without Jaron Ennis in maybe easier fights, which are still good fights. Xander Zayas is trying to make that Josh Kelly fight, right? They're at a bit of an impasse. You're ducking, no, you're ducking, but Josh Kelly didn't fight in front of, like most British championship level fighters, didn't really kill a big crowd when he upset Bakram Murtazaliev in January. It was in front of, to my eyes, one of the smallest championship fight crowds that I've seen in a British fight, right? So he wins the IBF belt. Xander Zayas has two belts. Fundora has the other belt. Now, Zayas, they're doing a tug of war. Will you come to England? Well, you don't really sell in England like most Brits do. You come to Puerto Rico, where I just had $1 million gate. Well, Top Rank doesn't have a network. We do, except let's say Kelly and Zayas figure this thing out and they fight for 3 of the belts. And let's say Oscar's able to pull a Ryan Garcia. This guy kind of hates my fucking guts. He doesn't really trust me anymore. I haven't really handled it that professionally, but maybe, hey, I said what I had to say, and we're gonna move forward for as long as I possibly can make him move forward. Then Fundora and Ortiz, which is a great fight. Do you get what I'm saying? If Ortiz could beat Fundora for the WBC, and then by that time, if Zayas could beat Josh Kelly, I'm just reading down the line in another way I don't think other people are thinking about. Ortiz versus Zayas, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Mexican-American fighter against a kid who's growing into his own, is starting to really, was in the halftime show with Bad Bunny, is starting to look like the next man up from Puerto Rico. If he could sell the Garden out once in the next year, then Ortiz and Zayas could become the fight in the 154-pound division for undisputed.
Yeah, well, all this is happening. Where's Jaron Boots Ennis?
Tell Eddie Hearn, get me the Josh Kelly fight. What are we doing over here? You trying to turn me into Demetrius Andrade over here? Get me the Josh Kelly fight. This is what I signed you for. I thought, oh, isn't he your kid? Feed him to me.
Mm-hmm. There is a race to the belts, a challenge for undisputed for obvious reasons. I can understand why all these fighters want that, of course. But there's also the spotlight up for grabs. None of these guys have separated themselves from the pack as the star, right? Which maybe is a good thing. Like you say, if they fight too soon and get a star too big, you might end up in a Tank Davis situation where some guy is big enough to make big money without fighting the best of the competition in his division, and then just goes out there and gets those gates. That is likely to happen if this scenario that you play out doesn't happen, right? But if it does happen the way you say, and again, Boots has got to get in there, then it's going to happen honestly. Then you're going to not only get the star emerging, but the best of the lot proven. And that stardom be based on that, not your ring walk, not your promoter's best lines, not the highlight or the focus of the network, not your hometown, but having beat the best in the division and us all watching this thing bottleneck and produce the star out of that process. That's what we want. But again, it's going to require promoters to get on the same page and have vision for the division, not just their fighter, and nickel and diming so that they can just get in the best position, fight for fight, go week for week. And I hate to use a Dana White line, but like it's a going out of business sale every time. That's going to be the difference. When Dana White says that the boxing promoters have no vision, I think that might be what he actually means. Not that they don't have a vision for a promotion or to put on a great show for a Saturday night on any given Saturday night, but do they have a vision for the whole? Do they have a vision for an entire division? Sometimes in a situation like this, it just screams necessity, and it never happens and never plays out that way. That's the vision that they're going to have to compete with Dana White and Zuffa on. If you're going to compete, I don't think any one promoter is going to be able to deal with all of the pieces they got over there at Zuffa to build the machine that they are well on the way to building.
Well, no one they never want to risk sacrificing their own for the greater good, which is someone's got to lose. PBC has Fundora, Golden Boy has Ortiz, Matchroom has Kelly, and Boots, Top Rank has Zayas. In order for them to put that all together, someone's got to lose. Someone's got to show up empty-handed. Dana White doesn't have that problem. He's got them all. So,
right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Well, but Dana White right now has almost nothing.
I'm talking about in his
Yeah, but in his, well, if we're not talking MMA, if we're talking boxing right now, they don't have none of that.
Right.
So if these promoters get together, not that they've got to all form one Voltron company, but that they're willing to work together and let the fighters fight it out. Yes, somebody's got to lose, but back your man to be the other guy.
Yeah.
And such the chips fall where they may. If you're willing to compete and work in good faith together with the vision for the different divisions, then you can stand up something very competitive against what Zuffa's doing, no matter how much money they have. If you got the fighters, you got the entertainment, you've got a vision for the process to produce the biggest stars and the best fights, then it don't matter. Then you can neutralize the money deficit.
Let's not hold our breath. Before we get out of here with this topic, though, where do you lean towards? Our guy Lance Pugmire, Pug Life, he went ahead and you like that? He said he spoke to lawyers throughout over at Boxing Scene. He says they are leaning towards this will end in a settlement between Ortiz and De La Hoya that will allow Ortiz his freedom that he seemed very confident he will get in the end of this. Do you think that's what happens? Do you think he'll have to hold out until August 2027, a la Mikey and Andre? Or do you think they, exchange some harsh words, let it all out, and Vergil Ortiz Sr. has to be restrained from trying to fight Oscar De La Hoya, and in the end, they do another fight or two together before it's all said and done? What do you lean towards?
I'm thinking they do another fight together, and then Oscar puts his best possible pitch on the table to retain Ortiz, give him some time to shore up his deals outside of the ring with his network, maybe some sponsorship that he can help stuff the pockets of Ortiz, maybe some relationships. Who knows? But he's going to put together a great package and try to keep the kid and settle these differences. But it's a fighter's market right now, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably going to be difficult if the trust isn't rebuilt and the relationship, the personal relationship, isn't attractive to keep a fighter, like I say, as a single promoter when there's so many places they can go and so many people try to grab anybody who's available that has potential.